Tell me, Waitress, what do you think about a $50 billion merger? The words cracked through the air like a whip, sharp, humiliating, meant to amuse the wealthy men seated at table 9 inside the Magnolia Club. Chloe Morgan felt every eye in the room turn toward her. Thomas R. Whitaker, billionaire, founder of Whitaker Holdings, and a man whose power filled a room faster than cigar smoke, leaned back in his leather chair with a lazy grin. His bourbon glass tilted in his fingers, then he accidentally let it slip. Amber liquor splashed across the polished oak floor and trickled toward Chloe's shoes. "Oh dear," he drawled. "Would you mind cleaning that up, sweetheart?" Chloe froze. The request wasn't a request, it was a performance. Lucas, his nephew, snorted. "Yeah, Chloe, you missed a spot. Right there, get the corner." One of the older men at the table chuckled into his wine. Another lifted his phone, pretending to scroll but actually filming. Chloe set the tray down on the service stand. Kneeling wasn't new to her job, but the way they wanted her to kneel, that was different. It wasn't work. It was humiliation. Still, she lowered herself to one knee, grabbed a cloth from her apron, and began wiping the puddle. Her hands were steady, her jaw tight, her back straight. "She's got good form," Lucas said loudly. "Flexible, too." More laughter. Chloe rose slowly, smoothing her apron. "Your food will be out in just a moment." Well, and for Duth, but Whitaker wasn't finished. "Wait," he said, voice booming. "Before you run off, answer my question." Chloe blinked. "Sir, the merger," he repeated, eyes sharpening with challenge. "Quanticore Tech, 50 billion. Should I buy it or not?" "Come on, Uncle Tom, let her speak," Lucas added with a grin. "I mean, what could go wrong getting investment advice from someone paid to mop floors?" The laughter rolled again, cruel and effortless. Chloe's pulse pounded in her ears. Quanticore. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years, not since the days when she sat in a corner office. Not since she was the prodigy analyst at Blackwell Capital. Not since the night Malcolm Blackwell stole her code, her identity, and her life. She hadn't expected to hear the name again, but here it was, staring at her across a table of bourbon and prime rib. Something inside her shifted. Not anger, not fear, recognition. "You want my advice?" she asked softly. Whitaker smirked. "Yes, impress us." Chloe took a breath. "You're walking into a trap." Silence. As if the oxygen had been pulled from the room, the smiles fell. The wine glasses froze mid-air. Whitaker stared at her as though she'd slapped him. "What did you just say?" "Quanticore isn't what you think it is," Chloe continued, voice steady now, crisp with the confidence she had buried for 3 long years. "Their patents are inflated. The liquidity numbers are staged. The true acquisition target isn't Quanticore at all, it's a shell company called Cygnus Holdings. Page 286 of your merger binder." Lucas let out a stunned, choked laugh. How would she know that? Chloe didn't look at him, only at Whitaker. "Because I helped build the system Malcolm Blackwell used to hide Cygnus," she said, "and I recognize his fingerprints." The table erupted. "Who the hell do you think you are?" one man snapped. "Some kind of psychic waitress?" Another scoffed. Whitaker didn't laugh. His stare turned dark and cutting. "You're claiming you know Blackwell's operations? You?" His voice dropped to a low growl. "A waitress in a $30 apron?" Lucas shoved back his chair, pointing at Chloe. "She's messing with you, Uncle Tom. Look at her, she's just trying to look smart." Chloe stayed still. "You asked for my advice." "Oh, I'll give you advice," Whitaker spat, rising. His face blazed red. Not with embarrassment, but fury. "Don't insult my intelligence. Or my business." He stepped forward abruptly, bumping Chloe's shoulder hard enough to send her stumbling back into a chair. Plates rattled. "Watch where you're standing," he snapped. "You people never know your place." A few nearby tables gasped. Most pretended not to hear. Chloe steadied herself, refusing to break eye contact. But her manager, Mr. Daniels, came rushing, face tight with panic. "Chloe!" he hissed. "What did you do?" "Mr. Whitaker, sir, I am so So sorry. Whitaker threw a dismissive hand. Fire her. The words hit harder than the shove. Sir, fire her. Whitaker barked. Mr. Daniels turned to Chloe, jaw clenched with fear and apology. Chloe, I'm sorry. You need to gather your things. Now. She stared at him. Daniels. I didn't do anything wrong. I don't care, he whispered urgently. Just go before this place gets sued or shut down. Whitaker folded his arms, satisfied. Good. Now get her out of my sight. Chloe felt her throat close. Not from shame, but from an old, buried fury she hadn't let herself feel since the night her entire life was ruined. She untied her apron, folded it once, and placed it on the table beside Whitaker's untouched bourbon. Then she looked at him. This merger will destroy you, she said quietly. And Malcolm Blackwell will be the one laughing. Whitaker's jaw twitched, but Chloe didn't wait for a response. She turned, walking past the mahogany bar, past the linen-draped tables, past the unspoken stares of those who pretended not to see the injustice. When she stepped out into the cool Atlanta night, she inhaled deeply, tasting rain on the air. She had just lost her job, but for the first time in 3 years, she had spoken the truth, and she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning. If Chloe's courage moved you, give this video a like and comment where you're watching from. You never know who nearby might be listening too. Rain dotted the sidewalk as Chloe stepped into the night, the warm glow of the Magnolia Club fading behind her. Her apron was gone. So was her job, and yet, the weight pressing against her chest felt familiar not as despair, but as clarity. She hadn't planned to speak. She certainly hadn't planned to stand up to a billionaire in front of half the city's power elite. But hearing Blackwell's name had pulled the past into the present like a ripcord. She turned up the collar of her thin coat and walked toward the corner. Her sneakers soaked through with each step. The cheap canvas no match for the Georgia rain. But she didn't care. Her mind wasn't on the rain. It was racing, calculating. They said the name, Quanticore, and she saw it immediately, the same financial scaffolding Blackwell used before. The same layered deception. The same signature handprint in how the shell companies were nested. It was more than familiarity. It was personal, because once, Chloe had designed those very structures, back when she was someone else. She crossed the street and ducked under the awning of a shuttered florist shop. The smell of old pollen and wet pavement drifted up from the sidewalk. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the battered leather wallet she never let out of her sight. Inside, nestled between a crumpled 20 and a faded receipt from the Waffle House, was her last trace of the woman she used to be. A photo ID. Edges worn. The name barely visible, Chloe Franklin. It had been 3 years since that name had meant anything. Back then, she wore heels and silk blouses. She rode elevators to the 41st floor of Blackwell Capital and shook hands with venture capitalists from San Francisco to Singapore. She designed predictive algorithms that moved millions before lunch and debugged trade models in her sleep. They called her a prodigy, the golden mind. Malcolm Blackwell called her his secret weapon. She had believed him. Worse, she had trusted him, until the day she opened a side server directory and saw it. A second version of her algorithm, twisted and rerouted to funnel money into offshore accounts. Cyprus, Panama, the Cayman Islands, all hidden under a series of dead-end companies' names she'd never seen before, but code she knew like her own signature. She had gone to Malcolm, terrified, thinking it was a mistake, a flaw in the system, a rogue update. He had listened quietly. Then, 2 weeks later, the FBI came for her. Wire fraud, embezzlement, computer crimes. He'd planted everything: fake emails, phantom transfers, even witness statements from coworkers. Her apartment was raided, her accounts frozen, her name blacklisted. She had lost everything in 48 hours. And when the press released the story, the headline wasn't about a betrayal. It was about the black female analyst who tried to rob Wall Street. That was the last day Chloe Franklin existed. She had taken her mother's maiden name, dyed her hair darker, and moved south to Atlanta, a city big enough to get lost in and small enough to disappear. She took jobs under the table, dishwasher, cashier, and eventually server, at the Magnolia Club. A place where no one asked about resumes as long as the steak was hot and the coffee black. And now, after 3 years of silence, she had spoken again. She wiped rain from her forehead and stared at the distant skyline. She didn't regret it, but she knew what came next. Thomas Whitaker wouldn't forget her face. He wouldn't forget what she said. And if he was half as ruthless as people whispered, he wouldn't let it go either. She turned from the awning and began walking again, this time toward the MARTA station on Peachtree Street. Her small studio apartment sat above a laundromat, 1 block from a check-cashing joint and 2 from a Baptist church that gave out free soup on Wednesdays. She climbed the steps slowly, her muscles aching from the night's tension. Inside, the room smelled of lemon cleaner and old wood. The lights flickered when she flipped the switch. She tossed her coat on the single chair, kicked off her soaked sneakers, and opened the drawer beneath her bed. Inside was the one thing she hadn't surrendered, an old black external hard drive. 3 years ago, she'd hidden it in the lining of a suitcase before the FBI raid. They'd searched her apartment but missed it. She hadn't dared plug it into anything since. Until tonight, she stared at it for a long time, the hard plastic cool in her hand. If Whitaker was serious, if he even cared a little about what she'd said, he might look into Quanticore. And if he did, he'd find red flags, patterns, holes in the valuation, and then he might remember the waitress who warned him. She needed to be ready. She booted up her decade-old laptop. The fan whirred like a dying animal. The screen flickered once, then stabilized. She hesitated, then plugged in the drive. A folder blinked into view. Hydra. Inside were files, diagrams, fragments of code. Some were her early designs. Others were versions that had clearly been altered, rerouted, disguised, proof of the framework Blackwell had used, just not the latest version. It wasn't enough to clear her name, but it was enough to connect Quanticore to the same pattern. A knock at the door made her jump. She slammed the laptop shut, pulled the drive, and slipped it into her coat pocket. Another knock. She moved slowly to the door, peering through the peephole. A tall white man in a tailored overcoat stood in the hallway. It was Thomas Whitaker. And he wasn't smiling. "Miss Morgan," he said through the door, "I believe we have unfinished business." Chloe didn't move. For several seconds, she simply stared through the peephole at the billionaire standing in the flickering hallway light. Thomas Whitaker, 6 feet of power wrapped in a charcoal overcoat, didn't look like a man accustomed to waiting. His jaw was tight, his eyes sharper than they had been at the restaurant, and rain dotted his shoulders like tiny shards of glass. He lifted one hand and knocked again, slower this time. "Miss Morgan," he said, voice low but carrying authority. "Open the door, please. I'm not here to cause trouble." The irony almost made her laugh. Their last interaction ended with him humiliating her, shoving her in front of a dozen witnesses, and ordering her to be fired. Trouble was the only language he had spoken that night. Chloe kept her hand against the frame, steadying herself. Her mind raced through possibilities. Confrontation, apology, interrogation, manipulation. Men like Whitaker didn't show up at rundown apartment complexes for friendly conversations, but she couldn't afford panic. Not anymore. She cracked the door 1 inch, just enough to meet his eyes and keep the chain lock in place. "What do you want?" she asked, tone flat. He exhaled through his nose, a barely visible shift, but enough for her to see he was actually trying to restrain his temper. "I need you to come with me." Chloe let out a dry, humorless laugh. "I'm not a dog, Mr. Whitaker. You gave me information tonight," he said. "Information I can't ignore." "You ignored it just fine 30 minutes ago," she replied. His jaw flexed. I reacted poorly. That's one way to describe throwing bourbon on the floor and firing me," Chloe said. Whitaker's eyes flicked downward, as if swallowing pride physically cost him something. "You caught me off guard. That's not an excuse, but it's the truth. You insulted me." "I did," he admitted. "You shoved me." "Example." His gaze tightened. "Yes, you made a show of humiliating me." "Yes, and now you're at my door. Why? To apologize?" she asked, skeptical. "No," Whitaker said. "To ask you how the hell you knew about Cygnus Holdings." The hallway hummed with the low buzz of a fluorescent bulb. A heater rattled somewhere downstairs. Chloe measured him carefully. His anger at the club had been fueled by pride. This anger was different. This was fear the kind seasoned businessmen hid behind steel expressions. She unlatched the chain but kept the door only half open. "Say what you came to say." Whitaker hesitated, glancing down the hall, then stepped closer. "I looked it up on the drive back. Cygnus Holdings is real. Page 286 is real. The valuation inconsistencies are real." His voice lowered. "What you told me shouldn't be possible for a waitress to know." Chloe met his stare evenly. "And yet, I knew." He nodded once. "Yes. Which is why you're coming with me." She shook her head. "You don't get to order me anymore." "I'm not ordering," he said carefully. "I'm asking." She didn't believe that for a second. Thomas Whitaker didn't ask. He acquired. He consumed. He dominated markets and boardrooms alike. Men like him didn't knock on doors, they kicked them open. But he had come. And that meant something was wrong. Chloe didn't move. "Where exactly are you planning to take me?" Whitaker Tower. She stared. "At 1 in the morning? I need answers now," he said. "Before this gets any worse." A beat of silence passed, tense and heavy. Chloe exhaled. "Why not talk here?" "Because what we discuss isn't safe in a building with paper-thin walls and neighbors who sleep with their doors ajar. My car is outside. We'll talk on the way." She thought of the hard drive in her coat pocket. Of Malcolm Blackwell. Of the algorithm she'd built, the one she prayed she'd never have to see again. She needed information too. Whitaker might be a brute, but he wasn't stupid. Tonight proved that someone powerful was playing him, and playing him hard. And if Malcolm was involved, Chloe was running out of time anyway. She grabbed her coat, slid on her shoes, and stepped outside. "This doesn't mean I trust you," she said. "I don't expect you to," Whitaker replied. They descended the stairwell in silence. The apartment building smelled faintly of bleach and damp carpet. On the first floor, an old man in a robe smoked on a balcony, watching them with mild interest before turning back to his TV. Outside, a black Escalade idled next to the curb. Chrome rims glinted against the wet asphalt. The driver, tall, broad-shouldered, stone-faced, opened the back door without a word. Chloe paused before getting in. "Before we go anywhere, I want the truth. Why do you care? Why show up at my door instead of calling a lawyer or sending security?" "Because you embarrassed me," Whitaker said simply. "And when a woman I underestimated embarrasses me in front of my own table and then turns out to be right, I want to understand how." She blinked. That wasn't the answer she expected. Whitaker stepped closer, his expression unexpectedly earnest. "You knew things you shouldn't have known. You warned me about something no one else saw, and for reasons I can't explain, I can't shake what you said. That still doesn't justify storming into my life," Chloe said. "No," he admitted. "But if you're right, if Blackwell is involved, then I need someone who understands what he does. Someone who's seen him work. Someone who knows the shape of his lies." Chloe swallowed hard. "I'm not your someone. I barely survived him the first time, and I'm not asking you to fight him," Whitaker said. "I'm asking you to tell me what I'm walking into. Just that." The driver waited, expression unreadable. Chloe took a breath. Deep. Slow. Surrendering to the reality that the past she had outrun for 3 years had finally caught up. She climbed into the car. Whitaker followed, closing the door behind him with a heavy thud. The driver pulled away, headlights cutting through sheets of rain. For a moment neither spoke. Then Whitaker said quietly, "Who are you really, Miss Morgan?" Chloe stared out the window, watching raindrops distort the city lights into streaks of gold and blue. "My real name," she said finally, "is Chloe Franklin." Whitaker frowned. "The analyst? The one who—" "Yes," her voice tightened, "the one who was framed." The billionaire didn't speak. For the first time, he looked shaken. Chloe continued, tone steady but tinged with old wounds. "I built an algorithm. Blackwell used it to steal millions. When I confronted him, he framed me. The FBI raided my life, so I disappeared." Whitaker rubbed a hand over his jaw. "And now you're here. In my car. warning me about the same man. She turned to him, eyes hard. Because you're next. He didn't argue. He didn't laugh. He just stared at her the way a man stares at the edge of a cliff he didn't know he was standing on. Chloe looked back out the window. She wasn't the waitress anymore. She wasn't the ghost she had been forced to become. And as Whitaker Tower came into view, rising through the rain like a steel monolith, she knew, tonight, the real war began. The Escalade glided through the wet Atlanta streets like a shadow with purpose. Streetlights streaked across the windows, turning the interior into shifting bands of gold and gray. Chloe sat upright, her coat clutched at her chest, every muscle tense despite the warm hum of the car's heater. Whitaker sat beside her, elbows on his knees, hands clasped, eyes forward. The posture of a man preparing for a storm he could no longer ignore. Whitaker Tower came into view moments later, 67 floors of glass and steel rising from Peachtree like a monument to ego, wealth, and unchallenged authority. Even at this hour, the lights glowed across the upper floors, a testament to the kind of corporate world where nights were long and power didn't sleep. The Escalade pulled into the private underground garage. The driver stepped out first, scanning the dim concrete space before opening their doors. Whitaker exited with a quiet urgency. Chloe followed, her pulse quickening as the cold air wrapped around her. "Stay close," Whitaker said, leading her toward a secured elevator. He swiped a card, the panel flashed green. "Not because you need protecting," he added, glancing at her. "Because I don't want anyone to see you. Not yet. 12:01. Chloe stepped into the elevator beside him. The doors closed with a soft metallic whisper. "You have people watching you?" she asked. Whitaker's jaw shifted. When there's 50 billion on the line, everyone is watching. The elevator ascended smoothly, the floor number glowing with each passing second. Chloe felt her stomach knot, not from fear, but from familiarity. This world of brushed steel, expensive cologne, and quiet aggression was once her world. She had walked halls like these before, confident, respected, brilliant. Before the fall, the elevator stopped at the top floor. Whitaker stepped out first. This way. His office suite was massive, full of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city, leather chairs, rich mahogany, and art pieces that probably cost more than her apartment building. But the room wasn't warm. It felt like a command center, a throne, a place where decisions changed markets and lives. Chloe stood near the entrance, refusing to let awe or nostalgia show. Whitaker walked to the bar, poured himself water, then surprised her by pouring a second glass and offering it to her. She didn't take it. "You still don't trust me," he said. "You shoved me and got me fired 2 hours ago," she replied. He nodded once. "Fair." He set the water down. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "I'll stand. Then I'll stand too." He crossed his arms. "Let's start from the beginning. Quanticore, Cygnus Holdings, Blackwell. How do the pieces connect?" Chloe inhaled slowly, grounding herself. "Quanticore looks valuable," she said, "but its real assets have already been stripped. Cygnus Holdings is the shell where the missing pieces live. And Cygnus is operated by, who? Someone working with Blackwell, or Blackwell himself. And how do you know that?" Her heartbeat thudded once heavy, reluctant. "Because the structure, the pattern, the architecture of those shell accounts is identical to the ones Blackwell used 3 years ago." She tapped her temple. "I recognize the blueprint. I helped design it." Whitaker paced once, twice. "Why would he recycle the same system?" "Because it works," Chloe said. "And because he thinks no one alive can recognize it." Whitaker stopped pacing, looked at her. "Alive or hidden?" She didn't answer. He exhaled, steadying his voice. "If what you're saying is true, I'm about to make the worst deal of my career." "Yes," Chloe said softly. "You are. Show me proof." Chloe reached into her coat pocket, fingers brushing the hard drive like a secret heartbeat. She didn't pull it out, not yet. The timing wasn't right. The files inside wouldn't fully match what Quanticore was doing today. But they'd show the pattern, enough to force doubt. Before she could answer, the elevator chimed. Whitaker stiffened. No one should be here. He turned toward the hallway. Chloe stepped instinctively to the side, positioning herself so she could see the elevator doors reflected in the window. They slid open. A woman emerged. Tall. Pencil skirt. Sharp bob of sleek black hair. Glasses perched with mathematical precision. Her heels clicked like the tick of a warning clock. Sophia Lynn, Whitaker's chief risk officer. Chloe didn't know her personally, but she recognized the type instantly. Controlled, calculated. The kind of executive who cataloged people into assets and liabilities at first glance. Sophia's gaze flicked over Chloe, lingering on her damp coat, her worn shoes, and something cold curled at the corner of her mouth. Not confusion. Recognition. "Well," Sophia said, stepping forward, arms crossed. So the waitress wasn't lying after all. Whitaker turned sharply. "Sophia. Why are you here?" "I should be asking you that," she said. "But instead, I'll ask why the woman who caused a scene at your dinner table is standing in your office at 2 in the morning. Chloe lifted her chin. "Funny. I was wondering why the person responsible for oversight didn't notice Quanticore's fake valuations." Sophia's eyes narrowed. Whitaker stepped between them. "Enough. She's here because she knows things we don't." Sophia spoke without looking away from Chloe. "And you trust her?" "I trust the facts," Whitaker said. "And you have any?" Sophia asked. "Or is this just intuition?" Chloe finally pulled the hard drive from her coat, holding it up. "I have more than intuition." Sophia stared at the device like it was a weapon. "And what's that?" "Proof," Chloe said. "The original blueprint of Blackwell's fraud system." Sophia's expression flickered a flash so quick most people would miss it. Chloe didn't. Whitaker didn't either. "Sophia," he said slowly. "You look uncomfortable." I'm tired," she replied smoothly, recovering in an instant. "It's late." "It is," Chloe agreed. "But your reaction wasn't about the time." Sophia's jaw tightened. Whitaker's voice sharpened. "Sophia, I want full access to the Quanticore files. Now." Sophia lifted her chin. "Denied." Whitaker stepped closer. "Denied? You don't need them," Sophia said. "We've reviewed everything. The merger is solid. Nothing indicates fraud. 2 have-to-dos within the rarity." Chloe's mind snapped into place, like gears aligning. She already knew. "You're lying," Chloe said. Sophia's nostrils flared. "Excuse me? You're protecting someone," Chloe continued. "And if I had to guess, it's not Whitaker." Whitaker's face went still. "Sophia," he said, voice sinking into danger. "I won't ask again." Sophia didn't move, didn't blink. Then very softly she smiled. "You have no authority to override risk management protocol at this hour, Thomas. Is not Retta?" Chloe stepped forward. "Then maybe he should ask who signs your other checks." Sophia's smile faltered. A crack, tiny but fatal. Whitaker's eyes burned. "I want your access card. Now." Sophia hesitated. For 1 second, then she bolted. She turned, sprinting toward the elevator. Whitaker swore. "Stop her!" But Chloe was already moving. She threw off her coat, sprinted across the office floor, her shoes slapping the polished marble. Sophia slammed the elevator button, frantic, breath sharp. The doors began to close. Chloe lunged. Her hand shot out, and she caught the door just before it sealed. Sophia stared at her, eyes wide, panic breaking through the polished exterior. "You're not going anywhere," Chloe said, voice low. "Not tonight. Not before the truth came out." Sophia Lynn's pupils dilated as Chloe shoved the elevator doors wide open. For a split second, both women stood frozen, one breathless from escape, the other from pursuit. The elevator's soft chime broke the silence, but neither moved. "You're making a mistake," Sophia hissed, her professional polish unraveling. Chloe held her ground. "So are you." From behind them, Thomas Whitaker's footsteps echoed across the marble floor, heavy and purposeful. He didn't run, men like him didn't run, but his voice cut through the tension like steel through fabric. "Sophia," he barked. "Hand me your badge. Now." Sophia didn't answer. Her breathing had turned shallow. The mask was slipping fast. "You can't do this," she snapped. "There are procedures. Chain of command. This isn't how we operate." Chloe stepped slightly into the elevator, blocking the panel. "No. This is how you operated. Silencing dissent, hiding weaknesses, redirecting blame. That's your chain of command, isn't it? Sophia turned on her. You don't know what you're talking about. You're a disgraced analyst in a waitress uniform. And you're the one who rubber-stamped Quanticore's numbers, Chloe replied coolly. That makes you either dangerously incompetent or complicit. Whitaker stopped just feet away. I've seen your audit sign-offs. The inconsistencies. The accelerated risk scores. You cleared Quanticore without hesitation, even when my junior team flagged missing assets. Why? Sophia's arms were rigid at her sides. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Because nothing was wrong. Chloe shook her head. Wrong answer. She held up the hard drive. This contains fragments of a system built to hide fraud across multiple holding companies. What Quanticore's doing now? It's an evolved version of this. The same core, same framework. The only way to explain how clean your audits look is if you helped bury the red flags. Whitaker stared at his chief risk officer. Tell me she's wrong. Sophia opened her mouth, then closed it. Something fractured behind her eyes. Security's on the way, Whitaker said. You can cooperate, or you can fall with him. Sophia's lip trembled just for a moment before she composed herself. You don't understand what you're stepping into, she said. I understand enough, Whitaker replied. Sophia reached slowly into her blazer pocket. Chloe tensed, but instead of a weapon, she pulled out a slim leather wallet. She removed her key card and held it between two fingers. Fine, she said, voice quiet. You want access? Take it. But what you find won't bring her back. Chloe blinked. Her? Sophia stared at her, a flicker of something unreadable in her expression. Regret? Bitterness? Resentment? It was gone too fast to name. I hope you know what you're doing, she said to Whitaker, and walked past him, heels clicking, spine straight. Security met her halfway down the corridor. She went with them without resistance. Chloe and Whitaker stood alone in the silence that followed. She cracked, Chloe said. She panicked, Whitaker corrected. There's a difference. Chloe looked down at the keycard in her hand. This gets us into the risk management servers? Whitaker nodded. Everything. Internal audits. Transaction overlays. If something's been doctored, it'll be in there. She moved toward the desk, sat down, and plugged the hard drive into the terminal. The computer screen flared to life, cool and sterile. I need full system access, she said. I'll clear it, Whitaker replied. Stepping into a second room, a smaller control center adjacent to his office. Moments later, a soft beep indicated access granted. Chloe's fingers danced over the keyboard. Sophia's files are encrypted, not standard company protocol. She used a layered cipher. Can you break it? Yes, Chloe muttered. Because it's Blackwell's pattern. Same thing he did to me 3 years ago, hide files behind a mirror of legitimate ones, like nesting dolls. The truth's always in the smallest one. Her voice had changed faster, sharper, laser-focused. Whitaker watched her from the doorway. A quiet witness to a transformation. The waitress was gone. In her place sat a data hunter, fluent in digital warfare. A progress bar appeared. 63%. 81%. 100%. Chloe froze. What is it? Whitaker asked. She clicked twice more, then leaned back. On the screen, a folder labeled Project Sentinel. She opened it. Dozens of files, internal memos, payment transfers, audit reports with dual timestamps. One transfer repeated every month. $125,000 from Meridian Logic LLC to a private account under Sophia Lynn's name. She was on his payroll. Chloe whispered. Meridian Logic is a Blackwell front. I traced it once. Couldn't prove it then. But this, she opened a memo, scanned the text, and stiffened. They were planning to collapse Quanticore's value within 60 days of acquisition, she said. It's all here. Fake assets, phantom patents. Once Whitaker Holdings absorbs them, a shell bankruptcy triggers, and we eat the losses. Whitaker looked stunned. Why? Why destroy my company? Chloe's eyes didn't leave the screen. Because Blackwell doesn't want Quanticore. He wants you. He wants your empire. Broken. Cheap. Ripe for takeover. Whitaker ran a hand through his hair. He's going to strip me like he stripped you. She nodded slowly. He's playing the same game. Only now, it's bigger. Faster. Meaner. The lights above flickered briefly. The servers hummed louder. Then another alert popped up. Remote user login. Accessing Sentinel files. Chloe's head snapped up. Someone's in the system. Right now. Whitaker frowned. How? Chloe's fingers flew. The files are being copied. Not deleted, copied. Someone's watching us. They're inside the network. I'm Zero. You said this encryption was biometric. Whitaker said. Only Sophia could open it. Chloe's face went pale. She didn't need to open it. She just needed to trigger the back door. She stood. This whole folder, it was bait. Whitaker's face hardened. So who's watching us? Chloe turned slowly toward him. Blackwell. Whitaker froze. The screen flickered again, then blacked out. Just before it did, one final message flashed. See you soon, Chloe. The screen went black. Chloe stared at the message still imprinted in her mind long after it vanished. See you soon, Chloe. Not Miss Morgan. Not Waitress. Chloe. Her real name. The name she buried. Is he in the system? Whitaker asked, voice low, calm in the way men speak when standing on the edge of something catastrophic. Chloe didn't answer right away. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then typed a sequence into the terminal. No response. She tried again. Nothing. All access routes terminated. He's already gone, she said. But he knows we're on to him. Whitaker stepped closer. And he addressed you directly. Yes. That message wasn't just taunting me. It was personal. She nodded. Whitaker exhaled. So this isn't just about my company. This is about you. Chloe turned to him, jaw clenched. It's always been about me. 3 years ago, she confronted Blackwell with the truth, and he made her disappear. Now she had risen again, not as a whisper but as a wall between him and his next conquest, and he hated her for it. Whitaker rubbed the bridge of his nose. All right. First thing tomorrow, we kill the deal. I'll call the board. Shut everything down. Start over from zero. Chloe's gaze snapped toward him. You can't. His eyes narrowed. Excuse me? You kill the deal now. Blackwell still wins, she said. He already covered his tracks. You pull out without proof. The board panics. They assume you're the liability. The stock drops. Your enemies circle, and Malcolm swoops in to buy you for pennies. Whitaker's mouth tightened. So we walk right into the trap instead? No, Chloe said. We walk through it, eyes open. She picked up the hard drive from the desk, her hand steady again. We don't kill the deal, not yet. We use it. Whitaker stared at her, a slow recognition dawning. You want to bait him. I want to bury him. She stepped away from the desk, pacing now, falling into rhythm. This wasn't theory. This was combat. And she'd been forced to train for it in silence. We make it look like you're still on board with the acquisition, Chloe explained. We fake compliance. Let him think his plan is working. Meanwhile, I trace the money behind Cygnus Holdings. I gather evidence. Build the case from the inside. Whitaker considered her for a long moment. That's a dangerous plan. Well, Chloe gave a short, humorless laugh. You think? You're asking me to bet everything on a woman I publicly humiliated 3 hours ago. Chloe met his eyes. No, I'm asking you to bet everything on the woman Blackwell was afraid of 3 years ago. Silence stretched between them. Then Whitaker nodded. All right, he said. You're in. He crossed the room to a cabinet behind his desk, unlocked it, and pulled out a sleek laptop and a black badge. Temporary consultant access, he said, handing them to her. This logs you into our internal architecture. Clean channel. Air-gapped. Chloe took the badge and clipped it to her coat. Where's your war room? She asked. 72nd floor. Data analysis. I'll start there in the morning, she said. I'll need your full tech team. No questions. No ego. And no one tells Sophia I'm still here. Whitaker hesitated. Sophia's in custody. Internal only. For now. Legal hasn't been alerted. She's a liability. Chloe said firmly. She was on the payroll, and now she's exposed. That makes her unpredictable. Do not let her out of your sight. Whitaker's mouth twitched. You always this charming? No, Chloe replied. Just when I'm trying to stop a corporate coup. A faint chime echoed from Whitaker's desk, his personal line flashing. He glanced at the screen and frowned. Blocked number, he muttered. He tapped the green button. Whitaker. F. There was silence. Then a voice, distorted, digitized, echoed through the speaker. It's a shame. You could have had it all. Chloe stepped closer, heart thudding. Whitaker didn't speak. His knuckles whitened on the edge of the desk. But you chose her. The voice hissed. The ghost girl. The fraud. Blackwell. Chloe said quietly. She will burn you, the voice continued. Just like she burned herself. Just like she burned me. Chloe leaned in, her voice cutting through the static. You're slipping, Malcolm. You used to be better at hiding. A sharp chuckle crackled through the line. Oh, Chloe. You still don't understand. This isn't about hiding. It's about choosing the right moment to be seen. The line went dead. Chloe stared at the handset. Whitaker looked over at her. He's watching everything, isn't he? Yes, she said. Which means we need to stop assuming we're alone. She reached for her phone, then stopped herself. Don't call anyone from your main line. Don't send emails. From this point forward, if it's digital, it's vulnerable. Whitaker nodded slowly. We go analog. We go surgical, Chloe corrected. No noise. No signals. We hunt him on our terms. A long pause passed. Then Whitaker asked, Why is he so obsessed with you? Chloe looked out the window, at the dark skyline beyond. Her voice barely above a whisper. Because I know where his skeletons are buried, she said. And because I was supposed to stay buried with them. That's a work in Suver. Whitaker's expression hardened. You're not just back, he said. You're the key. Chloe didn't respond. She didn't need to. She knew what she was now. She was the reckoning. The sun rose over Atlanta like it had something to prove. Its golden light spilled across the glass facade of Whitaker Tower, turning every window into a mirror of fire. But inside the 72nd floor, where the data analysis division lived in silence and code, the morning was anything but warm. Chloe stood at the entrance of the war room, badge clipped to her lapel, eyes scanning the dozen analysts already seated behind glowing monitors. Most were young 20s, early 30s, dressed in startup casual, tapping away at lines of code, financial models, and real-time risk feeds. They all looked up when she entered. Some looked confused, others curious. None recognized her. Good. Whitaker had done as promised, fast-tracked her clearance, erased the incident from the security logs, and told no one she was back. Officially, she was a last-minute consultant from an unnamed risk firm. Unofficially, she was here to destroy a ghost. A tall analyst with sandy hair and nervous energy approached her, clipboard in hand. Hi, he said. You must be Ms. Franklin? Chloe smiled lightly. Morgan, she corrected. Just Morgan. Right, Morgan. I'm Kevin. Whitaker said you'd need full access to the Quanticore pre-merger pipeline. Everything from the last 6 months, she said. Cross-check with shell company transfers, off-ledger payments, and dummy assets filed with Cygnus Holdings. Kevin blinked. Yeah. Sure. That's a big ask, though. You think there's fraud? Chloe didn't answer. She simply walked past him and took the chair at the head of the database. You've got 3 hours, she said. Flag anything that doesn't balance to the cent. Kevin scurried back to his desk, and the room snapped into motion. No more questions. No whispers. Just keys clacking like the sound of war drums. Chloe pulled out her laptop, plugged in the hard drive, and opened Project Sentinel again. Now she had access and a team to verify everything. But her real target wasn't just paper trails. It was the digital fingerprint left behind by the man pulling the strings. Malcolm Blackwell had always used shadows. Anonymous servers. Disposable domains. But every architect leaves a seam. a flaw in their design, especially when they recycle systems, and Chloe had once helped him build them. She launched her old tracing algorithm, fingers flying. For a moment, the screen looked like static code upon code, cascading windows of encrypted data. Then, like a ship surfacing from deep water, a string of accounts appeared. Small, hidden, repeating. She leaned in. Got you. It was buried deep inside Cygnus Holdings' 3 payment pathways registered under dormant companies in Liechtenstein. Each transaction identical, $980,000 every quarter, routed through a financial consultancy that only existed on paper. She tapped the database. Kevin, she called. He slid over. Yeah? These 3 entries. Run them through the offshore clearance bot. Look for registration matches anywhere Blackwell's shell networks have touched. Kevin whistled. That's gonna take some time. You've got 45 minutes. As Kevin hustled away, Chloe leaned back, allowing herself exactly 3 seconds of breath. This was what she was built for, not food trays, not scuffed sneakers or forced apologies, but pattern recognition at scale. The kind of mental jujitsu Wall Street paid 7 figures for. Once, she didn't hear the door open until the chair next to her shifted. Thought you might want breakfast, Whitaker said, setting down a white paper bag and a coffee. She glanced at him. Bribing your consultants already? Bribing you to sleep eventually, he said. You've been at this 12 hours. I'm close. Whitaker's gaze moved to the screen. Those the ghost payments? Yes, Chloe said. Cygnus has been transferring money to shell consultancies that don't do anything. The names are random. The taxes are filed from Romania. But the structure? It's him. Blackwell. Same code, same proxies, same fake directors. I've seen it before. Whitaker rubbed the back of his neck. My board meets in 48 hours to finalize the Quanticore deal. If we don't have something bulletproof by then, you'll walk into the fire, Chloe said. I know. He hesitated, then added. Sophia's still not talking. Legal has her in a sealed room downstairs. She's lawyered up. She won't talk, Chloe said. Not unless she thinks Malcolm has cut her loose. Whitaker raised a brow. And, how do we do that? Easy, Chloe said, eyes narrowing. We fake a leak. We make it look like someone in Malcolm's network has flipped. She panics. She thinks she's next. And if she feels abandoned, she'll save herself. Whitaker grinned. That's diabolical. It's justice, Chloe said, with teeth. Suddenly, Kevin called out. Morgan, you need to see this. End quote. Chloe pushed back from her desk and followed him to his station. He turned his monitor to show a payment network highlighted in red, yellow, and green nodes. This is the map of your flagged accounts, he said. One of them, registered under Hemlock Associates, shares a server path with an old dormant firm, Argo Equity Solutions. That name ring a bell? Chloe froze. Yes, she said. That's the firm Malcolm used to move the offshore funds 3 years ago. The one I found before. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Kevin looked worried. It's still active. At least in the back end. There's a heartbeat ping every 2 days. Show me where, Chloe said. He pulled up a second screen. IP trace logs routed through a co-location server. Manhattan. East Side. Whitaker's voice sharpened. That's his headquarters. No, Chloe said. That's his ghost node. He's not hiding offshore anymore. He's operating from the open because no one thinks he needs to hide. Whitaker's brow furrowed. Can we tie these directly to him? Chloe considered. Not yet, but if we can breach the Argo node, we might get user logs, access timestamps, enough to subpoena. That's risky, Kevin muttered. If he catches us. He already knows we're coming, Chloe said. Now we make sure he knows we're faster. She turned to Whitaker. I need your best ethical hacker, someone good enough to crack a rotating 256-bit encryption with layered firewalls. Whitaker didn't hesitate. You'll have her in 30 minutes. Chloe looked back at the red node blinking on the screen. Argo Equity Solutions. The one that survived. The one that held the key to her ruin. She wasn't just going to trace it. She was going to rip it open. The hum of the servers was like a heartbeat. Low, steady, relentless. Chloe stood inside the Level 3 cybersecurity lab on the 39th floor, rarely used, mostly forgotten, and now commandeered for war. Cables snaked across the tile floor like vines. Portable monitors lined a long glass table, glowing with command prompts and firewalls stacked like digital dominoes. At the center of it all sat Rhea Thompson, early 40s, wiry, brilliant, tattooed forearms visible beneath her hoodie sleeves, a former NSA penetration analyst who'd walked away from the government after a whistleblower scandal and disappeared into private consulting. Whitaker had pulled strings to bring her back. Now she was Whitaker Holdings' sharpest blade and Chloe's last hope. "So," Rhea said, typing rapidly, "we're trying to crack a 256-bit dynamic key rotating every 6 hours, buried behind a shell company server in East Manhattan that's already been scrubbed clean twice this year." Chloe nodded. "And if we don't, we lose our window to expose a multi-billion-dollar corporate hijack orchestrated by a man who nearly destroyed my life." Rhea cracked her knuckles. "Cool. I live for this stuff." Whitaker stood behind them, arms folded. He hadn't left Chloe's side since she'd found the Argo ghost node. The risk now was enormous. If Blackwell sensed they were inside the last surviving strand of his old network, he'd burn the entire web, and any hope of proving the Quanticore collapse was deliberate. Rhea pulled up a 3D encryption map. "Here's the primary lock, standard for Blackwell's architecture. But this," she pointed to a blue pulsing orb, "is new. Secondary encryption built over the core." Chloe leaned closer. "It's self-replicating." "Yep, defensive AI. You punch the wrong sequence, it mirrors the core and disperses the data into null paths." Whitaker frowned. "Meaning?" "Meaning we get one shot," Chloe said. Rhea nodded. "Exactly. Hit it wrong, and the whole damn thing scatters like sand." Whitaker exhaled. "So how do we avoid that?" Chloe's voice dropped. "We don't guess. We remember." 18. She walked over to her laptop and retrieved a printout from the Sentinel drive, a hard copy of the earliest iteration of the encryption core she helped build under Blackwell's team. Her original architecture, back then, she'd written a failsafe into it. A back door, just in case she ever needed to undo what she'd made. She found the line of code, memorized it, and returned to Rhea. "Inject this sequence," she said. "It mimics a corrupted backup, bypasses the AI and delays the replication trigger." Rhea raised an eyebrow. "That's a hell of a gamble." "It's not a gamble," Chloe replied. "It's my handwriting." Rhea typed it in, paused her fingers over the return key, then glanced at both of them. "Ready? Do it," Chloe said. She hit enter. The screen froze, then flickered. Then, the orb turned green. The system split open like a digital oyster, revealing hundreds of files nested deep beneath the core. Chloe gasped softly. "We're in." Rhea let out a slow whistle. "Well, damn." Whitaker stepped forward. "Start downloading." Chloe didn't wait. She sifted through the folders, emails, financial logs, signed agreements all time-stamped within the past 6 months. Blackwell hadn't just set up the Quanticore trap. He'd done it while impersonating a legitimate investor under the name Nathan Sloan, using forged credentials and proxies. But it was all here. The proof. Emails from Sophia confirming false valuation entries. Transfer memos between shell entities. A pre-written bankruptcy filing for Quanticore dated exactly 21 days after the merger. Her hands trembled slightly. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was indictment. Then she opened a folder marked Judas, Insurance. Inside were transcripts, surveillance logs, photos. Chloe's breath caught. There, in grainy black and white, her, pouring coffee, picking up trash in the Magnolia Club, taking the bus, walking home at night. "He's been watching me," she whispered. "For months." Whitaker leaned in, expression hardening. "Why?" Chloe clicked deeper. A memo popped up. Should she re-emerge, implement narrative discredit, mental instability, fabricated records, leak prior arrest. If she attempts to re-enter corporate space, activate BETA protocol. Contain. The word contain made her stomach turn. "This wasn't about hiding what he did to me," Chloe said quietly. "This was about erasing me entirely." Whitaker's voice dropped. "He was planning to bury you a second time," Chloe nodded. Only this time, no headlines, just silence. They stood in grim silence for a beat. Then Rhea muttered, guys? They turned. Rhea pointed to her screen. A new alert blinked red. External access breach attempt. Origin. Unknown. Oh no, Chloe muttered. He's detected the back door. Rhea's fingers moved fast. He's launching counter-scripts, trying to fry the server. We have to get the data out now, Chloe barked. Already compressing, Rhea said. 60 seconds. The lights overhead flickered. The cooling fans roared. And then another alert. Power surge detected. Emergency backup systems engaged. Whitaker pulled out his phone. Shut down the external network feeds now. I can't, Rhea shouted. He's bypassing our firewall. Chloe moved, grabbing the physical drive from the port. Forget the rest, she said. We've got enough on here to sink him. But, Rhea began. Pull the plug, Chloe shouted. Rhea yanked the server cable out of the tower. The screens went black. Only the emergency lights remained. Chloe stared at the drive in her hand. It was warm, humming, alive with everything they needed. Whitaker looked at her. Is it enough? She nodded. Then let's end this. He turned to Rhea. Send decoy files to Malcolm's server. Make it look like we failed, burned the back door, and lost everything. Stall him. Make him think he's